So welcome, this is the Drupal usability meeting for August 13th, 2021. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen. And also on the meeting are Ravi Shankar, Antonia, Paolo Henrique Cota Starling, and Thomas Howell. I hope I didn't mangle any of those names too badly. There are a few issues that were mentioned in Slack. A couple of them are follow-ups, but let's start with this one. It's issue 1870454. And the title is "The delete operation for the added languages is scary or confusing." So I've already brought up a site. This is the Umami demo profile. I've enabled French along with English and Spanish that come with that profile. And here on the languages administration page, I could add a new language, which is how I added French. You can still see the status message from when I did that. The default language is English. You're not allowed to remove that. You can translate it, which is a little bit confusing, but not what we're worried about today. For the other two languages, you have the option to delete. And the suggestion is that we change that label. Instead of calling it delete, call it either remove or disable. Any questions so far?
No.
No.
So I, for one, am not sure what happens when you delete a language. And
it is just deleted, I think. Been gone from this list.
Could you speak a little louder, please?
I think it will deleted. I think it will just gone from that list.
Okay. But I guess the question is, what happens to any content in that language? So I've added a translation of one article in French. Do you know, without experimenting, what'll happen to that node when or to that translation when I delete French?
I would assume that the translation gets deleted as well, because otherwise it just wouldn't make any sense.
Well, let's find out.
If they vote for disabled, then maybe that's not the case.
Yes.
All right, well, let's find out. Are you sure you want to delete the language French? Yes. Okay, as Ravi said, it's no longer on the list.
Oh, it just deletes the interface translations. I see.
And when I reload the content page, I get an error. That is.
Oh, well, that's bad UX. Okay.
Yeah, I was playing with multilingual and I never thought of deleting a language.
Oh, that was Offer. I didn't notice that you had joined us, and I see Aaron has also joined us. So let's.
Should we check the PHP report, the error? Yes.
The Drupal log, yeah.
Yes.
All right, I lost track of time just there. I was starting eating cake, and I was like, "Oh, I better go usability meeting." And I looked at the clock. I was like, "Oh, it's already started." That's what I get for eating cake.
Benji, what you're running here is core itself. Any patches that you're testing? I joined a little late, so I didn't know.
Hi, no, this is just core, not quite up to date version of 9.3 with the Umami demo profile. And I enabled an extra language and I translated one node into French. And then when I removed French or deleted it, that's the question of this issue. What is the appropriate label there? Just loading the content page, admin/content, generates an error. And the Drupal log shows call to a member function on get ID on null. I guess the other question is what happens when I try to view that page? So this is previously loaded into the tab. What
Do you
happens?
know
when I
the node ID? Or it's actually it's the same node ID.
Yeah, it's 403. Sorry, 404. It's 404.
104, you say?
404.
The page not found. So okay.
But
No. I just don't know node ID. I was just telling that page was 404 after deleting that numbers.
Oh, 404, page not found. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a little surprising. So maybe I will just add French back, see what happens.
if UX wise, I would suggest the behavior here is like, I think other things in Drupal do that, of as long as there's content in that language, not interface, don't let them delete the content because of these unexpected changes. Like it's a lot of hard work that's being deleted in one click.
Yes, if I were to delete Spanish from this site, then a bunch of things would be deleted, not just my test translation. Okay, so that was an interesting experiment. Are there other settings that affect this behavior?
I'm trying on my using Drupal, I'm trying to delete Spanish on the latest 9.2 and see if it's also going to result in a similar bug.
Okay.
I'm testing too, but with the standard profile installation.
So far, it looks to me as if the label should be scary. The point of this issue was that
I don't think it's a UX issue. I think.
say again?
I don't think it is a UX issue anymore because
I think we have two issues, I guess. This is the first one, but we just discovered a second one. The fact that we get the white screen of death after disabling a language. We should at least have a warning or something saying that there might be unexpected errors if you disable a language that has content associated with it.
yeah.
Yes.
Basically, it should not allow to delete that language if content is deleted.
Yeah, so the white screen of death is clearly an error. It's clearly a different error, a different issue from the one we're looking at.
Yeah.
And
Deleting
think
Spanish, by the way, did not result in any special message, and I can see the list of content with no errors. But interesting enough, now in the list of content, I can share screen if you want, but now I have gluten-free pizza twice, or basically every recipe appears twice in its English name.
yeah, why don't I let you share your screen and show us what?
Or if you want, Benji, I can just share the link and you can go. It's like it's a public site. So is that okay with you?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'll go back to sharing my screen.
Let me chat here.
It does kind of sound like that would be a bug that's one of those ones kind of triggered under weird conditions. In the error message, did it say something about layout builder as well? Because I feel like it's one of those things that's probably under certain conditions. What does it say? Yeah, it says a layout builder entity view display. Get ID on null. That's definitely to do with the entity API. So it's trying to, yeah, that definitely seems like a bug kind of thing to me that needs to be looked into.
So offer, this is admin.
I also
Maybe it's
saved.
just a umami bug. Sorry.
I don't think I'm not objective about umami, but I don't think it's a. I don't think umami can create that bug. Umami is just using core with theme files, so it shouldn't be
Yeah,
something specific umami adds to Drupal.
that'll definitely be like further down the stack. It's essentially, from a very quick look at it, it looks like layer builder is, that page is trying to load with layer builder. Layer builder is trying to load, or the view display is trying to load an entity, and it's getting a null response back, and then trying to not accounting for the fact that could be null. So that definitely sounds like a core bug in potential layer builder, possibly in the entity API itself, like in the view display.
Benji,
Again, not like, yeah.
Sorry, Aaron. I made a backup for the database, so in 2 seconds I can bring it back to how it was as soon as umami was installed, and then we can try maybe the French again, adding and deleting. Maybe it's additional language beyond these two for some reason.
Well, I would rather assume that this is what's supposed to happen, and have a look here. So presumably, these are now 2 different nodes.
They're the same nodes because translations happen with the same node ID with a different something. So according to the prefix of the language, it would know which content to pull, but they're all the same node IDs.
That's right. This is node 8 looking at the address in the lower left corner of the screen. And this is also node 8. So one of them takes a long time to, there it is. So they look the same.
We can try add Spanish and see if all of a sudden it restored itself as well.
Yeah, this is a very strange set of affairs.
I mean,
I want to investigate a little more, but I'll definitely re-enable Spanish in a minute.
Yeah, but the links you're using here are, yeah, it doesn't have the information of anything else, I would assume, any other language, because it's the same link of node 8 edit.
Yes, it is the same link twice. So that makes me really wonder why we have 2 copies. And they have the same text. They're both, well, of course they have the same text. They're the same URL. So the question is why it shows up twice on this list. Can you clear caches?
Sure.
I don't have an easy way to do that for me. I have to navigate to configuration, development, performance, or something.
Actually, I'm working on a version that's going to have it easier, but let me just do it from here.
There, I found it. So let's see whether we still see all these duplicated.
1 second, I'm almost there.
I beat you to it.
You did?
Yeah.
You cleared cache and stuff?
See?
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you. I enabled the admin toolbar, so now you'll have a little easier navigation in the menu.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a different bug. The same node is being listed twice. I would say that disabling or deleting a language, the current the current user interface, is fundamentally broken, and we can't decide what the right label is until we fix that.
I have another, I guess maybe it's obvious, but seems like it's rare edge case, since I don't know if anyone reported on this before.
I just added in the chat an issue about it.
Nice, thank you.
Thanks. And I forgot to mention, I do keep an eye on the chat. If you'd rather type rather than speak, you can put comments in the chat and I'll read them into the recording. So good. There is an issue related to these bugs. Disallow removing a language when there is content in that language. So, and this does look like the error message we were seeing. So there is already an issue related to that. I would suggest that we postpone the issue we started with on this one. We can't really decide what the label is until we have some sort of reasonable behavior when you trigger the action. Does that sound reasonable?
And I think we could probably queue this for review at a future meeting, because I'm sure we could come up with an idea of, well, just looking at this and like, well, it should we disallow removing language? Could we not just like have it an option to delete all the content like we have in other places? So potentially there's a scope there for us to provide some kind of direction on this.
My thoughts is, it seems like removing language, there's so much to explore that was not explored yet. You know, edge cases, it might be the first step to help solve it, quote unquote, is disallowing, while then figuring out what it actually is supposed to do, if not disallowing it. But
yeah, it's a good point.
Also, I would think, you know, why should we let people like potentially break the site if they can manually make sure, you know, choose this language, create a view, bulk views, there's many ways to do it. Actually make sure you delete all that content, and then when there's no special things left, you can finally remove the language.
Okay, so shall we go back to the experiment? And I think I'm ready to re-enable Spanish on author's site. Any other tests we should try before doing that?
Sounds good to me.
So let's see. Configurational, regional, and languages. And let's add Spanish back.
Hey, they're back.
And this is en/node/18. This is es/node/18, and so forth. Let's just have a quick look that. I wonder if that body field was always empty, or whether it got lost, excuse me, lost in translation.
Well, the tagging is there, but the content is not.
That's what it looks like. Very interesting.
Also, another bug I noticed, when you enabled Spanish again, the interface, it shows that there's 0 strings of the interface. So that's another problem.
I'm sorry.
In the language interface, the language page.
Right, that's what I meant to open, but this tab.
Yeah, so you see it's 0 out of 9207 at the bottom, and it should have thousands of strings that are already translated. So I would guess if you change your interface to Spanish now, we will still see a website in English because it seems like Spanish didn't come correctly. Yep.
Yes, that's as you predicted.
It didn't like re-download it for some reason.
Is there anything in the logs, like a notice or anything?
Oh bother. Is there anything in the logs?
This, yeah, I don't know actually.
Recent log history, that one. So that's the one I just triggered. Spanish was created. So that seems like yet another bug.
Yeah, like when you are getting a new language added, the translation is being downloaded from the server. And in this case, it skipped that step for some reason.
And then I think Paolo found yet another related issue. Duplicated rows on admin/content if author is translated. Huh. You think that's the same issue we saw?
I don't think so.
Translate user one into Spanish. That looks like a similar result, that everything is duplicated, but I think it's different cause.
There's some insight from in the comments.
On the issue I'm looking at now?
Yeah, like that one right there from Jen.
Number 3?
Yeah. I don't know if it's helpful, but it's sort of an analysis, I guess.
This is going to come up whenever you do a join in views with translations of multiple entities.
Yeah, when we added another language to Umami and made it multilingual, we knew it's going to bring more or expose more of things that Drupal core by itself doesn't do well with multilingual. One of them, the discussion, but I don't think something happened with it, was the content view. When you view it, is missing some of these things. So, you know, do you want to see everything? Do you want to see one language? Do you want to see more? I think it has parts of it, but it's still also missing.
Right, so the content list is generated by a view, so it's probably related to this. These are, you know, views is doing something wrong. I'm ready to move on. Any further comments on this group of issues? We started with one, but we now have several.
Just for a brief comment, in case anyone looks at this video later, I find the behavior to be a departure from how we handle, for instance, when a user goes away, you have choices of how you want to handle that content. And the fact that you can delete the language without being given options for how to handle content that's been tagged with that language is a little bit troublesome. It seems like there's an entire pattern that's missing or not being followed. And I don't expect us to do anything. I just wanted to note it with this collection of issues. And finally, I'm wondering if we're seeing an underlying like pattern of the translation capabilities are in need of a more significant review. So rather than being a collection of individual issues, if there may need to be some effort to review everything in total, because it's very possible that these have consequences for one another, such as the issue that we started this with. I don't think you should be addressing that until several of these other issues have been addressed first.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that. I also think that the first issue that Paolo brought up is probably a good place to start, even if it's not the ultimate answer. But let's first not allow it until we get it fixed, get a more comprehensive fix, allowing options.
If we go down that path, then my recommendation would be that it needs to have strong language that says when adding a language that it cannot be removed currently. So that if someone were on a production site, they wouldn't willy-nilly add languages believing they could easily remove them. For instance, if someone were to typo a language, or if they didn't have access to a particular character set and they had to make a change to allow access to that character set, and they were just playing around, if it's production, then they can't remove it. If we remove the capacity to remove a language, we need to make certain that we have accompanying information warnings, etc. It wouldn't just block it, because that could be confusing in different ways.
Yes. Although it is possible, but first you have to remove all content, which doesn't mean just nodes, which can get hard. But there should be some way to remove all the content and that's translated, and then you can remove the language. Okay. So I'm willing to add a comment to the original issue unless someone else would like to do that. And let's look at some of the other issues. Thank you, Aaron, for adding these to the issue for the meeting. So let's return to these two issues that we've looked at previously. So I think I've already got them open. So indicate the non-stable statuses in the admin/modules page. And we reviewed this a few weeks ago on July 23rd. And since then, some of our recommendations have been implemented. And it's time for a follow-up review. So this is issue 3215043.
Yeah.
Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it might actually be that screenshot might be their summary, but there's definitely an up-to-date screenshot in one of the most recent comments. But actually, it might be that screenshot that's in the summary. Just looking at kind of the interface for linking out there to the pages that would explain, oh, this module's deprecated, this is experimental. So we can see that now.
So shall I scroll?
Yeah, it might be that screenshot, but if there's definitely an up-to-date one in the comments at the bottom. Yeah, so that one there, which looks like it is the same screenshot.
Let's open both of these screenshots in separate tabs so we can compare them easily. So I'm switching to the one at the bottom. Yeah, no, those are the same screenshot. experimental modules are provided for testing purposes only. Use at your own risk. Deprecated modules are modules that may be removed from the next major release of Drupal core. Use at your own risk. And then there are more messages. The comment module has to be enabled in order to install forum. Workspaces is experimental and forum is deprecated. Would you like to continue with the above? Continue or cancel?
So I think that more information link was a key addition there, because in the there was an issue that's been implemented to add a sort of life cycle message or URL key to the module info file. So I think the idea being that the more information link would then take you off to the appropriate piece of documentation. I believe that's what has been added there.
So shall we have a look at what our recommendations were and then see whether they've been implemented?
That sounds like a good idea.
All right, so here's my comment from July 24th. So that was after our meeting. We recommend a follow-up issue to update. Oh, but there is already an issue, generally liked the feature, blah, blah, blah. One place to provide such link is deprecated and obsolete modules and themes. If I am building a site that uses the forum module and get a message that is deprecated, what should I do about it? Or perhaps I already administer such a site and I upgraded to Drupal 9.3.0. Probably the forum module is being removed from Drupal core, but added as a contrib module. In this case, it would be helpful to provide a link to the contrib module. Okay, so that was the first request, that when something is deprecated, we provide a link to the contrib version. And one place to provide such link is on this manual page. And it looks as though someone has added this section, advice for obsolete modules. Simple test has been removed from core. And presumably, when we actually deprecate something like forum, we'll add an entry here. And if there is a link to the, or if there is a contrib version of a module, we can add a link there. And we also suggested another follow-up issue on admin reports updates and admin reports update. So they don't actually mention any of this in the proposed resolution section.
So I wonder if one value we might be able to add now would be to whether for instance, that more information link is a good way to present that, which I would think it would be.
So presumably that link goes to the page I was just looking at.
It might go somewhere else, because I think in one of the other issues where there's a new key added to the info file, it allows for, say, a contrib module to specify what further action needs to be taken, or where that, a link off to somewhere.
Let's look at related issues.
I think it was, I think I actually linked the related issue in the comment on the UX issue. Actually, it's probably easier.
On this link?
On the UX issue.
the UX issue. So
Sorry for today's meeting, though. The issue for today's meeting. Yeah,
Okay.
in the comment, yeah, so the life cycle link key. So that's now something that can be added to any module's info YAML file. And I think that was done as a follow-up.
And it's already been fixed and more than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So so with that being done, the issue now is able to actually make use of that. So I think this issue is just to add the lifecycle link key to the info file, make that possible. But now what we're seeing is, for instance, that more information link is where where it gets the value for that link.
Oh, so it's the responsibility when deprecating the forum module to decide where the link will go. And it,
Yes,
interesting.
that's what I understand anyway. So like one of the advantages of that obviously being that any providing a standard mechanism like this, any contrib module, say, that wants to mark itself as experimental or deprecated or whatever, could link off to some documentation page or another module or something.
Or it could link directly to the contrib version of the module.
Yeah.
So in terms of maintenance, I think that's probably a good idea. We're not required to update a particular documentation page for every deprecated module. The deprecated module itself has the most useful link. Okay, so I think that satisfies the request to give us something actionable. So the previous message was saying forum is deprecated, and the question was, okay, it's deprecated, what do I do now? And the answer is that the forum module itself provides the most useful link. And since we don't know whether that's a link to a handbook page or a contrib version of the module, we can't be any more specific than more information. So we provide whatever link the forum module provides. So it has addressed that bit of feedback. And it was done by yet another addition to the info.yaml file, as I suggested. And it also looks as though the follow-up issue has been added. I noticed that in the related links for admin/reports/updates, and there's now a related issue. Oh no, that's admin report status.
Is the only thing that's not actioned yet is did we recommend adding that link to the actual module listing on the admin modules page?
Isn't there already an issue for that? This is the issue for that. So I'm sorry, what are you saying?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry, I was just remembering what you'd written in the issue, but I think that would be implemented issues. I just wonder if it's just going to be like, is the more information link there enough when you're on that screen? Or what I also wonder is if there needs to be a link, like I think as you said, maybe said in the previous comment, along with like the configure link or the permissions link, maybe there's a deprecated, like maybe there's a link there or something when you expand the modules and like the information for a particular module.
Right.
Or if this is enough.
And the issue summary doesn't say anything about that. I think there are changes to the admin modules page, but it's not mentioned in the summary. Yeah, here's a screenshot showing how it changes.
Yeah, so I guess is that enough on the modules page or itself, like on the listing, or my thinking would be, do we need that link somewhere there as well? Like if you have the
Doesn't say
module
anything about
enabled,
it.
for instance.
Yeah, once we have this additional information in the info.yaml file, let me go back to my Umami site. Let me go to modules page. So what's a module that has configuration and permissions?
Probably like block would be one there.
Thank you. Yeah, so along with help permissions configure, a deprecated module could also have a link on this page, so you don't have to wait until you get to the confirmation page. Although, right, you wouldn't see this at all until the module is enabled.
I mean, maybe you could, if that's something that like it could be changed to show that link.
Yeah, I think I would want to see it here because you only see the confirmation page once. And once that goes away, it would be useful to have the deprecation link here, which means we need a new icon.
Oh boy.
Okay, so this needs an issue summary update. There are several changes, only some of which are shown in the issue summary. I still think it needs a follow-up to make changes to the update report. It should have a link. Now that we've added that additional link to the info.yaml file, we should show it on the modules page and not just on the confirmation page.
Yeah, so I guess the question could be is like, what should that link be titled? Because we can't just put more information there because that isn't clear. So we probably want some useful label for that link on the where you would see it along with like help permissions and configure.
If we want just one word, probably a warning icon and then the word deprecated with a link. What do you think of that?
Yeah, because you could also presumably this could be used for, say, experimental modules as well. So that could also be then say like experimental and then maybe like more information or something, or deprecated and more information.
Yeah, so trying to stay in the scope of this issue. This issue is about, oh no, I'm wrong. This is about all non-stable modules, experimental as well as deprecated. So yeah, like a warning icon and the word deprecated or experimental is appropriate. And then if there's a life cycle link in the info.yaml file, link it to that. That's a suggestion, maybe not the final suggestion. I'd be happy to have a designer chime in with a better idea.
I think that sounds good to me at least, we've got something to go on there. Yeah, does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I like the warning icon. I think it suits both use cases very well.
Great.
Great, thanks for that. Nice. As I often say, the strength of this meeting is that we do have people with different backgrounds, and I think you're a front-end developer or designer, and I'm a back-end developer, so good to have both points of view here. And Offer says in the chat that it's impressive the forum module made it to 2021. Yeah, I think I think the reason it's lasted so long is that we don't know how to remove a module, and finally it got to the point where we had to do something about it. So I think it's not the only module that is likely to be removed in Drupal 10, or maybe deprecated in Drupal 10 and removed in Drupal 11. But I think there are a few modules, including forum and maybe aggregator, that are on the chopping block. Good. And any other comments on this issue? Quick edit will be removed as well. Yeah, I think that's been discussed too. Not because it's not useful, but because it's so buggy.
Yeah.
If I understand correctly.
It's amazing that we managed to pull poll out in 8.0.
Okay, so we have 10 minutes left, and there's one other issue slated for re-review. So the move administrator role.
Yeah, so this one was, we looked at this before. An interesting idea has been proposed and nicely summarized.
Issue number 987978. Move administrator role setting to new role settings form. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. Jumping ahead the gun there. Yeah, so there was since our last review, there was some work done to implement the suggestions, and then the idea came up about when we were looking at it, and it's nicely summarized in these two options that we now see. The idea that we sort of proposed before is option A, which was to basically create a form next that lives next to admin people roles. But then the idea came up, well, actually, it's technically possible for a more than one role to be flagged as an administrator role, since that lives on the role config. So why not just have a checkbox or something on the role edit form? And then that makes the patch also easier. So that was proposed. So it was really just to get an input on which option is actually better here.
So I have opinions on this one.
Okay.
The benefit of putting it on its own tab was that it allowed a pattern where we did that for other, not just administrative roles. Now that we are moving towards a model where we have content editor roles that are kind of predicted, but we want to allow people to change what they're called. So it's basically anything that my concern was not the direct consequence of this patch or this issue, but any follow-up issues. We're now essentially saying that they have to add checkboxes for any of those things. Now, that may be what we want, but it seems like that wasn't necessarily the intent. And what is the consequence of more than one role being tagged as administrator? Because as a site builder, I'd always thought of the administrator role as being singular and not something you would apply to one or more other newly named things. Like, it isn't a permission, it is an actual systemic, I don't know, pseudo entity, something like that, or pseudo object.
Right. And just to speak to that, I think we don't yet actually know what the impact would be, and nobody's actually that we know of is actually tested, albeit it's not hard to test. You just need to manually edit the configs to test what the impact would be if there is more than one admin role. We don't know what the assumptions that were made on the permission system, if it was ever just going to be, the assumption was that there was always going to be one admin role at a time. So we don't, yeah, we would need to explore the technical side of that in more detail, but I think he makes some really good points there as well, and I'm quite mindful of that.
Yeah, and it is also just conceptual. Like, what does it mean? Like, what should a site builder be thinking? Like, why would I want to have, like, administrator role is very specific in its in terms of its scope. And if you think of working paradigms in Salesforce or other SaaS products or other things, I've not seen a pattern where you essentially created a multiple roles and then assigned to those multiple roles a super role of administrator role. Then why are they differentiated at all? It's a very weird thing to do from my perspective as a site builder.
It's basically poor use of the permission system. I mean, the role-based access system says that a role is just a collection of permissions, and then permissions grant various things. But it is also possible, for example, in views, to say this view is visible to a particular role rather than to a particular permission. So I don't think it's good practice, but it's possible to have 5 different admin roles, and then for each view decide which admin roles are allowed to see it. Ugh.
That makes me cringe. I'm trying to figure out why your permissions weren't working in that context would be atrocious. Let alone any contrib modules that make any modification. It just, to me, it's opening up a real can of worms. And what I had hoped with our recommendation or the option of a separate tab was that you essentially could define admin role, content editor, anonymous, whatever we wanted these things to be. We were allowing a pattern that they could be renamed, but the machine name would remain the same, that this was a mechanism by which you could maintain parity for a machine name. I don't know how you can keep the same administrative role machine name for 5 different role. Like maybe it does it, but I don't know how that would really work. It's, yeah, it would confuse me.
Yeah, I think like I did also laugh at the idea that you'd have like 5 administrative roles, and the only difference between them is like there's like separate views that they all get to see. Like that seems like a way over-engineered solution to solve a problem of having different contexts for different users. In this case, certainly.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. So if I go and edit my YAML files, for each role, I could set it to be an admin role or not.
Yes.
But I don't think there's any user interface for that. This is the current user interface. And the whole issue we were looking at was to move it off of this page to some new tab. Does this allow me to select more than one?
No, so what it's doing, and the interesting thing about this is it's making an assumption, again, that rightfully that there should only be one administrator role. Back when we had brought this into core, this was the pattern. And I think this is brought in, there's a concept in Drupal 7, actually. We brought this, maybe it was 6, we brought this into core. But then in 8, because we moved to a more defined like configuration model where like each role is a configuration entity, somehow we ended up with, and probably for performance reasons, we ended up with a Boolean flag on each role being like this role is administrator. And essentially, if you change this, all it's doing is updating all of the roles so that it turns off whichever role was administrator, turns on a new one. So like in theory, despite what the UI says, like you can actually technically if you really want to hack it hard enough, you can export your config for your roles and then change them and then re-import them, and you'll like this it won't break this interface, but we don't know how that impacts the wider permission system if it even allows that.
Aaron, you
Right, so
just made. Oh, sorry.
So that's what I was saying. It's possible to have more than one admin role, but there's no user interface to make that happen.
Yeah.
That alone is not great. If you can override how this form works and then not have any indication that it's been done, that means if you have a handoff of the code base from one person to the next, you have to make certain that they understand the parity or the absence of parity between what's in the database and what's visible through the site itself.
So I think one way to address.
I want to keep an eye on the clock, and we are running out of time for this. Feel free to continue the discussion in Slack or on the issue. I think our initial impression is that this is a bad idea because it makes it easier to do something that seems sort of crazy, but we should probably discuss it a little further.
Yeah.
So the hour is up. Thank you all for joining. And we'll do it again next week, and we'll perhaps continue this discussion over Slack.
Thank you very much.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Yeah, bye.